Okay, right. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. Thank you for joining this Zurich Club Blue Business Development webinar, which will be hosted by Zurich Resilient Solutions and Aqualeak on escape of water. Let me introduce you to our three presenters today. First, let me welcome you to ZRS's Paul Vincent, who is a highly experienced water industry specialist with 28 years of experience across operations, engineering, and customer service. We also have Andrew Patterson from ZRS, who has worked in risk and insurance for 25 years, helping business reduce business interruption losses. Finally, a welcome to Andrew Jones from Aqualeak, a leading UK provider of water leak detection and risk mitigation systems. I will now hand over to Andrew, who will go through the structure of ZRS. Please save all your questions for the last 15 minutes when we'll do a Q&A. Just a reminder, the session will be recorded and available online afterwards. You can also get a copy of the slides if you wish. All right, over to you, Andrew.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. Morning, everyone. Good to meet you all. As Alex said, my name's Andy Patterson, Head of Business Development for Zurich Resilient Solutions on the property and risk side of things. So, as Alex said, I've been in the industry for 25 years, which makes me feel incredibly old. But I joined Zurich in January, so I probably haven't met most of you. Basically, my role is to support Zurich Resilient Solutions, and as you can see on the slide, the first key point we talk about was obviously we're there to protect your clients from a property side, but we are there to support them and support yourselves from a risk prevention side and a retention side of things as well. So my experience has been, as I said, risk prevention insurance for a number of years, working with the likes of yourselves and actually working as a broker at the time. So first thing to really stress about the session today, when Paul and Andrew will start talking in a second, is just really we're there to provide expertise to yourselves. A lot of insurance is about, paying a claim, etc. What we try to do to stand out from the rest of the market and to support yourselves is to stop those claims happening. It's all about risk prevention. So the key thing for us, and one thing I've seen since I joined in January, is the significant experience and expertise of the likes of Paul when they're out seeing your clients. Been on site multiple times. Obviously today is focusing on escape of water, and times already in the 12 weeks I've been here and seeing the impact that has on hotels and other businesses, the cause and the disruption to their clients, to themselves, and the loss of revenue. So just moving on. Just very, very briefly, this is what ZRS or Zurich Resilient Solutions are there to support you with. Now, today, as you'll see on the bottom left slide, we're there on the consultancy side and education. So we're going to be focusing on escape of water. But just have a quick scan of the slide that you see in front of you there. So we can help yourselves and your clients with building valuations. So there's a significant amount of underinsurance in the market for property. So that's an area we can help you with. Fixed fire protection as well. So for the lifestyle of a new build or a property, if your client's involved in that. Climate resilience, pretty self-explanatory. And we have a solution called Zurich Insight, which effectively will work with your client's building management system. It is a risk prevention tool for their property and an energy saving tool to support them. So just to stress one final time, yes, we're there as the insurer for your client, but we want to help you stand out from your competition. We want to help provide the expertise that your clients need and make sure that you're able to, reduce the issues they have and support their retention. Okay, just moving on. So today, please, if you can, give us your undivided attention for the next sort of 35-40 minutes. We will go through questions at the end. So if you've got any, please leave them for definitely the experts. That will be Paul and Andrew, less myself. Really what we want to go through today is the scale of the issue for escape of water. Since I joined Zurich, in almost every conversation I've had, people have talked to me about the frequency of claims and the severity of claims. Obviously, fire gets the sort of headline news, but we know that there's a huge issue there. We know claims are going up across the market, not just for Zurich. So we're going to spend some time today talking about the impact that's on the market, insurers, yourselves, and then Paul will spend some time talking about how that actually impacts property owners and those living in the property. We'll talk about why they happen, and most importantly as well, Andrew's going to talk about some of the solutions that we can offer to your clients as well. So we're hopefully they're going to provide some education on the topic, but absolutely how people can actually fix this problem. Thank you. And just next slide, Sarah. Thank you. So just have a look at the slide in front of you if you're not already. There's some pretty headline figures in there. So as you can see, that 1.8 million figure, that is a huge sum. And the 987 million pounds worth of claims made in 2022. Massive issue. As I said, frequency, severity is brought up in conversations with our underwriters, with our clients on a regular basis. The vast majority of claims are residential, but I think there's a bit of a myth that it's just for residential property. So, you know, there's a lot of work that the ABI have done as well on this, that industrial and commercial properties are just as likely to be affected. The volumes may be lower, but the impact potentially will be higher. So real standout slide for you there. There is a significant issue in there. That 1.8 million per day definitely brings this, you know, the current concerns home to light. As you can see there, and just have a quick scan of some of the figures there. I won't read all of these out. Couple of things to point out though, if you see that first article. So obviously if there's a leak, we're talking 60 litres a minute. And as I mentioned from the personal experience I've had when I was at a site recently, whole floor was out of use, was unable to be used, causing significant impact and disruption and a huge loss of revenue for the property I visited. So we know when claims happen, it's not going to make a small bit of difference. 60 litres a minute. I think again there's a potential myth about when claims come in buildings. You've got obviously things like flood, you've got impact, you've got malicious damage, you've got fire, theft, storm, etc., etc. But nearly 1 in 3 claims are for escape of water. So as I said a second ago, fire gets the headline news. These are the ones that are happening regularly. If as an industry we can fix this, this is obviously going to help with your clients' premiums and their day-to-day revenue lives going forward. As I mentioned a few times already, that third bullet point, a 50% increase in claims in 6 years, huge figures. And as you see on the last bullet point on there, as obviously we start working and building and living in more high-rise properties, you can see that as we effectively go up, the number of buildings, rooms, floors, etc. increases. So you look at all of these stats that I've mentioned today, the impact, yes, on the insurer, but obviously the impact that creates as a workload for yourselves and for the client. There is huge impacts on there. Just to stress in the final time before I hand over to Paul, the whole point of today's session from Paul and Andrew is talking about how we can work with yourselves to support the client to stop these claims happening. Everything that I've talked about is from an insurer's point of view and from a market point of view, which obviously affects premiums. And I'll hand over to Paul now just to talk about the impact for an actual client. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Paul Vincent, Escape of Water Risk Engineer for ZRS. So Andy's gone through the claims side of the impact of escape of water. I thought I'd just sort of outline some of the wider impacts. So I've divided this into 2. So that's for property owner and also for tenants and residents. So this first slide is concentrating on the property owner. And there's a few sort of bullet points there. That's not all of them, but I think they're the salient ones. So I'll just go through those just briefly. So additional workload. So each claim requires a large amount of time to resolve. There's forms to complete, evidence gathering to do, and all correspondence is time consuming. And if there's multiple claims, then that just exponential and it becomes a real workload to cover off. And then there's customer satisfaction as well. So resident satisfaction with the property will suffer due to the inconvenience and disruption. And this isn't just people that are directly affected, it's everybody in say a block, especially if there's communal areas affected. Lifts are out of action because the switchgear has been flooded out. So yeah, it's a real issue. And then that feeds into reputational risk for which affects both the property owner and the company. They get a reputation of poorly maintained properties, could show a wider issue. And then this feeds into rentable income. Residents will want to leave or not move in. So that will affect the amount of rent that can be collected and the rentable value that can be charged as well. This then feeds into increased insurance premiums and excess. So with a bad claims history, there's higher charges because companies will want to protect themselves and encourage behavioural changes for that property. And then finally, the market value. So the property will have, with a negative claims history, the property value will suffer. So moving on. So yeah, as I said, tenant side of things. And a lot of this is sort of outside any monetary value. It's sort of how they get affected. So the emotional distress of it as a start, the suddenness of an incident can sort of cause a loss of treasured possessions, sentimental value, and sort of irreplaceable items like pictures and things. So it's wider than just a sort of monetary cost for tenants. Displacement is a huge thing. So if they can't live in the property, they'll have to go into alternative accommodation. This could be far away, getting to work, children to school. The property itself could be far smaller, so there's a big compromise. It could be for weeks and months. There's a bit of a financial burden where contents can be damaged and that's not covered, and that will be on tenants to replace that and pay for that. And a big one is neighbourly concerns. So if you've got a leak in a flat and that affects somebody else, that can create liability issues, disputes amongst neighbours, which again is just adds to the problem. Then sort of a health and safety issue. So where there's been leakage, people can still manage to live in the property. That can lead to mould, and just a whole well-being sort of side of it. For all of this added together, for someone involved in this, it can be a really stressful event. So moving on. So just moving into this slide. So we sort of looked at sort of the impacts of escape of water. I thought I'd start looking at the sources. Again, this isn't a full list across here, but I thought I'd put the main sort of culprits, if you like. And as you can see, when you look at these, there's such a variety of sources. So you've got mains water supply pipe. There's a bit of a misconception that people's responsibility start as clean water systems rise into a property. It actually starts back at the revenue meter in the highway, or the property boundary, whichever is closest. So if there's any leak underground, that's responsibility of the property owner to repair that. If that meter is right back at the end of a private drive, the property owner will be responsible for that length of pipe through the driveway and then into the ground. So there is a responsibility there. And just going through them all: push fit joints, kitchen appliances, soil stacks and drainage pipes, overflowing bath and showers, poorly sealed sanitary ware, central heating systems, pressure vessels, pressure reduction valves where they're fitted, underfloor heating, it goes on. And so as a way of trying to sort of look at this and try and come up with some strategies, I thought it was helpful to start grouping these together. And so looking at these, I think there's three key sort of categories that it can be put under. So that will be infrastructure, operational and behavioural sources. So infrastructure is just an old supply pipe, old kitchen appliances, and they leak and they need to be replaced. Operational, that would be sort of like a maintenance regime, sanitary ware where the sealant has gone round a shower basin. So if that's not maintained properly or inspected regularly in 6 months or wherever it is, that then is like an operational issue. Same with selecting well-qualified professional plumbing professionals to do installations, repairs, new build, proper water management of that installation. That's another sort of operational source. And then behavioural, and that's all around the tenant. overflowing bath and showers, blocking soil stacks because they're flushing nappies down the toilet, that type of thing. So when you start grouping them, then you can start coming up with sort of strategies to approach resolving these sort of sources. So moving on. So they're the sources. So I thought I'd just quickly visit the principal causes of escape of water. So an obvious one is cold weather. Clearly, this targets pipework that's exposed to the elements and not protected by effective insulation. Everybody understands freezing expands water and creates a failure when it melts. So that's sort of one of the principal causes. As Andy mentioned, the height of buildings, that's something that's increasing. There's a propensity for new builds to be either higher or have more buildings that are higher in new developments. That's sort of driven by the housing market. Trouble is, as height increases, so does the complexity of the pipework. There's just more of it and more risk. And once you get above probably over 3 stories, you then need to start looking at pump systems. Normally, the public water main will operate around about 2 to 2.5 bar. That's where companies like to sort of supply at. They don't want too much pressure in the exit feeds and create leaks. And that's about 20 to 25 meters head. So 1 bar is worth 10 meters head. So clearly, once you get above three stories, you're starting to have poor pressure. You just won't be able to supply that. So there's pump systems, and the way they do that is to put a tank normally in the cellar and then pump off that tank. That can be up to 6 bar, increasing the pressure on the receiving pipework. There's also a problem with water hammer, where pumps switch on and off. Even though that is mitigated, there is still an issue, especially where pipework isn't properly anchored. So that's a big sort of an increasing source. The next one is poor workmanship. Leaks regularly occur during construction, believe it or not, sort of brand new property builds, refurbishment and repair and maintenance as well. So the common factors that sort of contribute to that is just a plumbing skill shortage at the moment. And so that leads to a lack of experience. There's a lot of subcontracting, so many layers within a sort of build. And so checking if people have got the right qualifications sometimes isn't possible, but it's difficult to do because there's so many different layers through the subcontracting method. Construction has a lot of time and cost pressures. Everything's just in time management, and that can lead to poor management during installation, inadequate testing and commissioning regimes. When I was on operations, I went to a property where there was 6 poor pressure or no water, and when I got there, the rising main, it was Brocker Flats, the rising mains were run up the side of the building with no insulation, literally just a bit of wood round, and that was signed off by a professional, so clearly, and they were frozen solid. And speaking to the claims team, new buildings for about 1 to 5 years, they expect a lot of claims because of poor installation. It settles down for 5 to 15 years, and then after that they then start getting wear and tear claims. So there's a recognition that newer buildings there is an issue. So just moving on, the fourth one I have there is pipe work materials. So over the last 25 years or so, there's been a move away from copper to plastic pipe and fittings. These are just more susceptible to poor installation standards. So plastic pipe is push fit. It's called fast fix, and rather than being welded, it's pushed together, and that they work as long as they're put together correctly. And there is an issue with that. So the other thing is with plastic pipe, poor on-site storage. If it exposes you to sun and cold during sort of storage, that can make them brittle. And that's the same for water pipes. So in the 80s, grey PVC was all the rage to replace pipework. It was left outside, went brittle, and now they're replacing all that now when they've got 120-year-old cast iron pipes still in the ground that are perfectly good, but it went brittle because of the way it was stored. It's a recognised issue. And then the other thing is once you introduce a mix of material, jointing from plastic to copper and copper to plastic, that's always an issue as well. Again, same on water pipes out on the highway. That sort of change of material and trying to joint between the two is a challenge, and that can be a source of issues. And then, as I've outlined, push fit joints are just more susceptible to leakage, but more importantly, catastrophic failure. I don't think they actually really show much, and then they just go. So it's not like they drip for months on end. I think it's literally they just go, and that's why they're quite concerned. Copper pipework has its weaknesses as well. You have compression fittings on those where it's threaded and a nut needs to be tightened, not welded like a solder joint. So if they're not tightened, that can be the same as a push fit. It will just catastrophically go. Heating systems can corrode copper if they're not properly maintained, if it's too acidic or too alkaline, it's not balanced. And then if copper's laid in concrete, sorry, not wrapped correctly, that can corrode it. And I've actually seen copper come out. That's not been. It looks like a piece of Swiss cheese. That's how bad it can be. On one particular leak I attended at a school. Sorry, moving on. So yeah, I thought I'd just sort of outline some of this in some case studies. These are actual claims at the moment going through. There's no details there because I can't really provide that, but they're all over £1 million, up to £3 million, and it's just to sort of pull out some of these sort of simple things that go wrong, that can and the impact they can have. So just top left there, hotel in London, there was a sprinkler failure, which is fair enough, but the reason it was such a significant claim is because of the poor management plan behind it. It wasn't shut off for 45 minutes. And so at the moment, there's a bit of an investigation into why that took so long, because normally there are ways to stop that. And so what's happened to this hotel? It's just had a refurb. 6 floors have all been completely ruined by the sprinkler being left on for 45 minutes, and that's affecting the whole property pretty much. So we've got residential flats, inadequate frost protection. So on this particular property, 157 flats have been leaked, had severe leakage, and that's all due to just poor lagging in the loft. It's really cheap to do, really simple to do, but it just wasn't picked up. Had an extended cold period, and it's leaked. And all of these particular residents have had to be housed elsewhere. The damage is that bad. Then another residential flats, but this time it's for wastewater leakage, and this is due to boiler overflows being connected to the soil stacks. There was a few boilers that the pressure vessels failed, and hot water went into the soil stacks and melted them. They blocked, and the thing here, and it's affected a large block of flats. The difficulty is it's heavily contaminated wastewater. It's not clean water, so you can imagine what the impact that has had on everybody. And some people are actually having to live with this as well. Not everybody's been rehoused. And then finally, luxury apartment block, compression fitting just not tightened up. It's affected 30 high-end residential apartments, and all of them got bespoke carpentry, marble flooring, timber parquet flooring. It's all been removed. All the kitchens and bathrooms have had to been removed because just one joint failed. So just as like try and pull out some of the impacts of some of these sort of small, what you consider quite small isolated leaks can create. Moving on. So that's sort of setting the scene of it. And so how can we sort of look to sort of prevent and reduce? You'll probably never fully prevent, but you can certainly tackle it and sort of reduce when there is a leak. So the way that we're sort of looking to do this, first off, with a lot of companies, is to do a desktop data review. And so this will be driven mainly by the claims history. So if you've got a residential company that has multiple sites, multiple properties, we'll pull together all that data, all their escape of water data from, say, 5 years ago, and then group that together. And as you can see on the top graph there on the right, that's an example of some of the work we've done with a multi-site customer. And the important thing there is that, so along the bottom, you've got properties, up the side is number of claims, but what we've also done is itemize it. So we've pulled out whether it's pipe, shower, kitchen appliance, sanitary ware, and so we've got categories there. And then that not only does it sort of find the hotspots where there is an issue with a property, say for example, but also why. And then you can start employing one of those sort of 3 categories I was talking about, infrastructure, operational, or behavioural, to try and then sort of come up with a solution. So that's one side of it. Another part of the data that we're sort of thinking of using is the water meter data, the charge data. It's really powerful, and I've used this a lot in the past, where you can benchmark properties, and so you can use any benchmarks. You can use number of people, so footfall, say number of flats, number of fittings, and then use that data to come up with a benchmark of average daily consumption in cubic meters, and then find out each property's average daily consumption and rank them. So the orange line there you can see on the bottom graph is the benchmark. The blue line are the properties against that benchmark. So as an example, with schools, we did a lot of work with schools. We found that, and we number crunched as many schools. So I worked for a water company, a large water company that had many schools in its supply area. We've got all that data together. We number crunched that, and we came up with 4,000 litres per pupil per year as an average. So 4 cubes. So 1,000 litres is into 1 cube. And what we found is 10 cubes and above, so 10,000 litres per pupil, it was a leak. Just hands down, just a leak, or they supplied, say, a leisure centre through there, or some other property. If they didn't, it was just a leak. The highest one I found was 64, and that was the leak in the kitchen with the copper pipe. Actually, 64 cubes per pupil per year, and the meter was absolutely whizzing round when I've got there. You could hear it above the ground. So it's really powerful stuff. The challenge with it is getting the data. So just pulling that data out, there's a bit of legwork there, but once that's done, you can then start using that. So we'll pull the water data, claims data together, just to try and see where that looks like. Try and sort of pull out unexplained use, and then you've got the history to back that up, the claims history, and then with a customer, we agree an action plan around that, like a escape of water strategy, if you like, to sort of follow up on some of this, and to then start looking to see how we can sort of approach it. Moving on, thanks. Thank you. So, once so with an action plan, what we'll agree with the customer is sort of dedicate escape of water risk engineer to oversee the whole project from start to finish, a centre point of contact. Unusual things with action plans, sort of like it's like a partnership approach. So we'll agree project time frame and dates, agree project objectives and outcomes, develop a stakeholder map and agree responsibilities, see where all the responsibilities for escape of water sits within a customer, review incident response and how this is managed, review maintenance regime as well. And the way that we'll probably do that, we can do that, is have sort of so the bottom one there on the left, sort of arrange stakeholder workshops if needed, sort of like a water workshop, and that'll be a session involving all the key stakeholders to review the escape of water issue across a business. So we'll develop an escape of water improvement strategies around risk assessments, discover blockers to best practice, explore tenant education and control measures like a post or something, or if there's behavioural issues there. Review incident response plans, how quick they are. Do have the same guys going out to the same building week in, week out, but it's not getting reported anywhere, that type of thing, pull that out. So review maintenance plans and regime, and review contractor procurement and quality controls. So where there's new refurb done, how good are the measures to ensure that the installation is of the highest quality, so that it prevents future problems. We can also visit site, so we'll do detailed on-site risk assessment surveys, so that what this will be is a full evaluation of water and wastewater systems across a property or across a number of properties. So we'll go around plant rooms, roof spaces, look at the pipe work, material, tank evaluation, heating assessment, what frost protection is there, where are the stopcocks, do they work, does everybody know where they are if there is an issue, so it can be isolated, is there someone there 24/7, or someone who can, is there a way of getting those shut off if there's something reported. So just look at that whole sort of on-site risk and how that's managed, and also the infrastructure and what that looks like, the physical side of it. Then another area we're looking into is leak prevention solutions, and this is sort of where Andrew will come in after myself. So we're looking at companies that can provide flow prevention and flow monitoring, so they can sort of supply up-to-minute data that alerts when an event is discovered. and that would be profiled around thresholds. And these will be inline solutions, or they can be clip-on the side of the pipe as well. And so there'll be isolation valves in there that can stop the water during an event. We're looking to cater for all property types as well. So we're looking for a whole suite of suppliers. And so we're going to be onboarding suppliers as approved by Zurich. And to be approved by Zurich, there's quite a lot of hurdles for a business to go through to then become recommended by Zurich, to give confidence to customers that the business there being recommended has all the right customer service and support for the product that they install. And so that takes me now into sort of the next section where Andrew Jones will pick up from Aqualeak, as they're one of our preferred suppliers for this sort of technology. And so moving on.
Thanks, Paul, and good morning, everybody. I'm Andrew Jones from Aqualeak Detection. So this morning I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the way that leak detection systems detect leaks, the types of considerations that we take into account when advising customers on system design, and also just give you some examples of some typical installations to just give a sense of the type of leak detection systems that we see. So firstly, let's look at the two different methods of leak detection: flow-based and sensor-based monitoring. Flow-based monitoring is essentially, as Paul just said, the installation of a turbine or some kind of flow meter on the mains incoming water main, and it's monitoring real-time flow to detect anomalies in flow to suggest a leak. So, for example, the spike that you would see from a burst pipe, for example. These systems are designed to be a single point of monitoring. So from that single meter, you're effectively monitoring a pipe network through a full property. So we typically see these most commonly in residential applications, so houses, apartments, etc. So we would typically see these specified for the residential applications, and they're suitable for both new build and from a retrofit perspective in occupied properties. With the sensor-based type of monitoring, these are using sensing devices, so that might be sensor probes or sensor cable, and they detect the unwanted presence of water when it comes into contact with those sensing devices, and then sends an alarm panel, a control panel into alarm. And those sensing devices are typically located where there is a higher risk of an escape of water, or perhaps where there is a critical or valuable asset that the customer wants to protect. I think with the sensing devices, they can also detect water ingress, which is a common problem. So not just the water escaping from pipe work, but also water ingress, which can be significantly problematic, in areas where that's not wanted. And because of the ongoing access requirements, we typically see those types of systems more installed in commercial and industrial type properties, where you've got floor voids, ceiling voids, risers available. So there's greater access for those types of systems for ongoing maintenance and investigation going forward. So if we just go on to look at the next slide and some considerations that we take into account. So in our experience, no two leak detection requirements are ever the same, and there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. And so I think there's a number of things that we work with our customers on to understand before we go into that system design element. And from our point of view, it's about understanding a system and then providing an advice and recommendation. And I think the first thing there is the type of application, which is the obvious one. So is it residential? Is it industrial, commercial? That will help determine the method of leak detection. In the case of some large residential properties, you may be looking at both. So, looking at some elements of flow and sensor based. And then I think the next thing is looking at the complexity of the plumbing system. So understanding, are there storage tanks involved? Are there booster sets? Are there branches off the main incoming pipe work? So a single point of monitoring won't necessarily be convenient, or won't be appropriate, because you've got several points of potential failure. So we really try to understand those potential complexities of the plumbing system. And then across different types of property, we're looking at what are the areas that you're looking to monitor and protect. So we call those zones. So everything from, if you're in a commercial property, you know, a server room, through to a tea point or kitchenette, through to a cleaner's cupboards, through to toilet cores, and so on and so forth. So it's really understanding from the customer, what are those areas that you want to protect, and equally, are there particular assets that you want to protect. So often we see people coming to us saying, we've got, you know, a large stock area that we don't want to get damaged, or we've got large data rooms or data servers that are critical to our ongoing running of our business. So we want to put particular specialist leak detection in those sorts of areas. And then I think the final consideration of this sort of general list is to look at what's the action that you want to take. So is it an immediate mitigating action? Is it the closure of a shut-off valve? Or are you looking for an early warning signal? So you don't want water to shut off because that might cause inconvenience to the client. But actually what we want to do is an earliest possible warning sign, so that we can then go manually investigate that and resolve the issue. So just depending on these considerations, you know, we can then work with customers to really develop a comprehensive and the most appropriate system. So if we just move on to the next slide, if we look at some typical installation examples. So this is what we would typically see in a residential application, and what this is, as I mentioned, a flow turbine meter installed shortly after the stopcock on the incoming main into a property. And what that's doing is it's monitoring the real-time flow, both in terms of the volume of flow going through that pipe, but also the length of time of continuous flow going through that pipe. And we think it's really important to monitor both of those aspects. What you don't want is to detect a high volume, but that volume has to continue for, say, 30 minutes before any action is taken, because obviously the damage is done. So what that does is it compares it against preset and adjustable thresholds in the control panel. And then when either of those thresholds are exceeded, that will then assume that a leak has taken place and then trigger an automatic action. So most typically, that in a residential setting, that would be an automatic shut-off valve. So I think what we'd say about the flow-based devices, and Paul touched on it in his section, is that they're very effective at detecting those sort of bursts, leaks or larger leaks on the pipework, but they're less effective at detecting the sort of smaller, very pinprick drips that you can see either on pipework, but particularly on waste where that you're not connected to the main pipework. So we are seeing an increasing demand for a sort of hybrid approach where people want flow and sensor-based protection from the same panel, which is now something that, you know, that can be supplied. And then so we've got people putting sensor probes, for example, by soil stacks or under waste pipes in utility rooms, as well as that flow-based monitoring, that sort of central point that's monitoring a full property. So if we just go on to the next slide, we'll have a look at sensor-based systems. And sensor-based systems are essentially modular systems. So they can start from something as simple as a single zone system, as we've got here, an example here on the left-hand side, where you've got a single panel on the wall and a sensor probe running, or a sensor cable running behind a T-point in an office, for example. With those single zone systems, you can daisy chain multiple sensors. But if you've got a long run of multiple sensors to a single zone panel, those panels aren't capable of distinguishing between which sensor has actually gone into alarm. So with those single zone systems, they're less effective. However, if we just go on to the next slide, what this shows is that there is, depending on the control panel, it gives much greater visibility over distinguishing where that leak has occurred. So on the left-hand side here, what you've got there is a multi-zone panel, so 5 or 10 zones, for example. Each sensing device is connected to an individual distinct zone. So in the example on the left-hand side there, you've got a sensor cable running around the perimeter wall. So that's zone 1. You might then have a sensor probe that's sitting in a drip tray at a high level below an air conditioning unit, for example, as zone 2. And then maybe zone 3 would be another sensor probe in a drip tray that's in the floor void below the server units. So you've got multiple points of monitoring and protection there, and you know that when a particular zone goes into alarm, then you can quickly investigate the zone depending on which one has been triggered. And then I think the these systems can be scaled up to as many as 625 zones. So from a single master panel using outstations, you can effectively take a leak detection system right the way up a large multi-level office floor, office building, for example. You can take sensing devices to as long as 100 meters away from the sort of the inputs, if you like. So you can imagine as almost a spider's web of a leak detection system, these systems can grow to be quite large and also future-proof. So you can start with, say, a 20-zone system, but as those the office block might increase, or the coverage, you want to increase the coverage of the leak detection system, they can be built upon in a modular fashion, which is obviously proves more cost effective as well for the customer. I think it's also worth mentioning, you can also get pinpoint accuracy of leak detection. So for example, to plus or minus 1 meter, which is particularly popular in applications such as data centers, where you've got large data halls of racks of servers, long runs of cable, and you want to know to within plus or minus 1 meter exactly where that leak has occurred along that run of cable, so you can very quickly investigate the problem and resolve it before you suffer any of the the potential impacts that Paul talked about. I think the other thing to say just on this slide is that these systems can trigger a number of different actions. So we've talked about the valve closure. They have audible and visual alarms sort of built into the panels themselves, which can also be repeated away from the location. Email and SMS notifications can also be sent, and they can also be configured with central building management systems to provide a central alarm system for the building. So there's a number of actions that can be taken when a panel goes into alarm. So if we just go on to the next slide, Paul has covered off a lot of the benefits that we see, but I think an important one that we are increasingly seeing from our customers is the one at the bottom there, looking at the environmental aspect of leak detection systems. And we've seen a real shift from the importance of energy efficiency to water efficiency. The Environment Agency highlighted, I think it was 2022, that the UK is on course for demand of water exceeding supply by around 2050 at its current rate. So there is a very big focus on sort of mitigating the unnecessary loss of water from an environmental and sustainability point of view. So there is, there's the need to reduce those or bring those benefits above financial and non-financial, but also the environmental elements to that too. And as I think everyone on that's presented has said, from our point of view, prevention is better than cure. So we just go on to the final slide here. This is just a few examples of to give you a sense of some of the properties out there that have adopted leak detection systems, have leak detections in them now, active and operating, from everything from large multi-apartment blocks through to government estate buildings, through to office and high-tech places as well. I think to give you a particular example, we've got a system installed, or we installed a system in the first phase of a global investment bank in Canary Wharf. And within 6 months of that leak detection system, which was a multi-zone sensor leak detection system being installed, they'd actually identified a number of small drip leaks that had come into contact with the sensor cable that was located. One of which was actually happened in a toilet area that was above a trading floor. So when it was investigated, quickly within a matter of I think it was about 15 minutes between it going into alarm and being investigated, they could then resolve the issue. But the potential impact of that going into a trading floor, both in terms of the revenue loss, but also in terms of the remedial costs of repairing an area such as that with the type of equipment that would have had in a trading floor, would have been significant from a claims point of view. So that's just one particular example of where we've seen one of our leak detection systems sort of go into action and prove its worth in quick succession. So but that's, I think, covered everything from my perspective. I'm very happy to take questions as part of the Q&A session, but I'll hand back to Andy.
Brilliant, thanks Andrew. So yeah, just conscious of time, obviously make sure we've got some questions. So just a very brief summary. Hopefully you found that the session really useful. Obviously I covered how big the problem is, the fact that it's increasing. Figure that sticks in mind, that 1.8 million per day. So we know this is only going in one direction. Paul obviously really succinctly covered the impact for the client, for the owner of the property, and I think the key thing out today, both Paul and Andrew has talked about the solutions that the products and services that we can actually offer. So yeah, I'll just pass over to Alex if you've got any questions. If we do run out of time, obviously more than happy that we will take some questions separately as well. So thank you.
Right, thanks all. Yeah, that was very insightful. So we'll go to like a Q&A now. We've got about 15 minutes to take questions. Yeah, I will just say that yeah, the slides will be can be sent around afterwards, and there will be a recording put up online. So yeah, if anyone wants to share that around afterwards, you're more than welcome to. Okay, so yeah, if anyone wants to put questions in the meeting chat, I will read them out to the presenters. So actually, we've already got one here saying, is there any evidence to suggest that if a client invests in escape of water risk prevention, insurers will have a more favourable view of the risk, i.e. reduced premium and excess?
I could take that. So there is an indirect benefit. So the premiums won't be directly, and the excess won't be directly reduced, but by installing some form of prevention measures like leak prevention systems like Andy outlined, the claims history will naturally go down. So over time there'll be a benefit, but it needs to be proved. So that's where the benefit will come in by putting these in. It will then stop the occurrence in the future, which will then benefit premiums, but also will then benefit the chaos that they can cause. So and the remedial works. I don't know if anybody's got anything else to add to that at all.
Paul, I was only going to add, yeah, just absolutely agree with Paul. Where we talked about, you know, claims being almost 1 in 3, then as Paul mentioned, yeah, there'll definitely be an indirect benefit going forward if we can solve this problem. Then yeah, obviously that's going to help premiums going forward. And as Paul just mentioned, the key thing is about the impact on the customer, the immediate impact on the customer, which is just as important.
Thank you. Okay, there's another one here. Do you have much success in respect of recovery in escape of water claims property to property?
Paul, do you want to try that one? Can you just read that one out again, Alex? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Do you have much success in respect to recovery and escape of water claims, property to property?
So when talk about recovery, is this the respect of recovery in escape of water claims, property to property? Yeah. So can we expand on that question a little bit more?
Okay. Yeah. No, we'll leave that one to the side for the moment. Are you saying recovery, subrogation from perhaps a property above?
Oh, I see. Yeah, I'll probably have to just sort of have a think about that and come back on that question.
Yeah.
So if I can do that, that would be
okay. Okay, I've got another one here. I hear lots of bad press about push fit and compression fitting joints. Knowing this, what steps are Zurich and the industry taking in the face of this?
Yeah, so what we're looking to do is try and influence the industry around this, and one of the sort of areas we're looking to try and do is get there was a system where there was a ability to get funding to install leak prevention. So we're looking at trying to get that system back up and running, but also we're putting together sort of paperwork, sitting on joint sort of meetings with construction companies and the government to try and see if we can sort of improve just the knowledge out there, and maybe get a water permit as well, where contractors can sort of issue that to subcontractors to then complete, to sort of give some confidence around sort of their training and their ability to install. But I think one thing that's probably quite evident is that these fittings now have been around for sort of 25 years or so, and the development of those has improved as well. So I don't know now if they're installed compared to 20 years ago. If there's just more knowledge, more people have got more skills in installation. So you probably find it is sort of solving itself that way, but also we're trying to influence the industry by sort of explaining what the issue is, and just try and get that whole development piece through. But that answers that one.
I think if I could just add to that as well, from our perspective as a supplier, the CIRA guidance, the Construction Insurers Risk Engineers Group best practice guidance, we've seen a real increase in communication from our customers, being mechanical and electrical contractors or main contractors, coming to us who have seen that guidance and are sort of taking notice of it, if you like. So from a raising awareness point of view of escape of water among the construction industry, that document has been sort of an important driver of that, certainly as we've seen it in the last sort of 12 or 24 months. But I know it's a focus on construction stage, but actually it does talk about occupied and operational stage too. So that's been a real awareness raiser among the industry that we work within.
Thank you. So another question here, is there any sort of basic pricing matrix you use to give a client a rough idea of what it may cost to install without having to engage in a full quote process to get some initial buy-in from the client?
From a leak detection point of view, absolutely. So there is no initial cost for quoting stage, etc. So I guess the quick answer to the question is, we're very happy to take an email or a call about a requirement. I can give ballpark pricing, and we've got scenarios of ballpark pricing to just give you an idea based on is it an individual house? Are you talking about a multi-apartment block? Is it a single T point or a number of and T points? We don't charge at any point before sale, if you like. So we can conduct site surveys on the sensor-based systems and things like that. So yeah, very happy to just get in touch. And if you've got a requirement, then we're happy to provide a ballpark cost and then go into more detail once if there's some initial buy-in from the client. Very happy to do that.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, sort of our on-site risk assessment, water workshop days, and any sort of desktop activity that's sort of done on a daily rate, so we can easily provide a sort of upfront sort of idea of what the cost might be. It just depends on the size of the project that we've got in front of us. So yeah, that's just to add to
that. Okay, thank you. Let me find. I understand from a recent submission that Zurich aren't currently writing new residential blocks of flats. Will future submissions with a good water management approach change your underwriting stance?
So yeah, I'm probably a little bit removed from that, but yeah, undoubtedly. My understanding is that we are as a insurer, but again, I can sort of get more detail on that and come back to somebody. Get back to the questioner on that.
Okay. With householders looking to cut costs and carry out minor plumbing works themselves, if a policyholder installed a joint or tap incorrectly and there was a subsequent escape of water, would your policy still respond to pick up the damage, or would Zurich refuse indemnity on the basis of defective workmanship?
Again, that's not an area that I'm sort of really up with, but yeah, I suppose there is a risk if it's incorrectly installed and it can be proved it was done by the householder. Maybe there is a risk there to them, but again, I can ask that question to the wider team and come back and give a fuller answer on that.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? I'm just looking. Hi, what is the general success rate for outlay recovery under contractors' PL for escape of water claims, where it has been proved that the damage has been caused by misfitting of connection joints, etc., by said contractors?
I mean, a lot of this will be sort of depending on the contract that the contractors have with the property owner and sort of the build. So yeah, again, it's sort of the claim side of things, which is a little bit removed from me. And again, I'll have to go to the wider team just to sort of get a bit more information around that question.
Okay, thank you. Why are fast fix push fit joints still used if we know they are a major source of leaks?
It's a cost exercise from the developers. They're far quicker to fit, to install. You don't need the soldering sort of skills. There's not hot works on site. It's just a far more convenient and speedy way of installing plumbing. So I think this is here to stay. It's just a case of, this is sort of the new system. It's just a case of trying to get the best out of it. And I think if it's done correctly, installed correctly, managed correctly on site, then they should be, because copper's not the best system either. That has its problems, like I explained. So there's no sort of one or the other. I think with the plastic systems, provided them it's managed correctly and the people installing them are experienced and have the time to do it, then they should be robust. It's just a case of getting that right, I think. But they're certainly not going away. It's just such a benefit to the industry to have those sort of systems involved.
Thank you. Gaining access to a leaking property can prove difficult. What options does a property owner have to help with this?
Well, I suppose eventually it becomes a legal option to get a right of entry if it's creating significant damage. And also it's just, I suppose from a property owner's point of view, just having good relationships with customers and maintaining that, and sort of keeping that relationship as good as possible. I mean, there are powers that the water industry have where they can enter a property that's creating leaks as well. So maybe that's an option. But really, it's just a case of having good relationships, maybe putting something in the lease as well. But ultimately, it's a legal option to gain access if there's nothing else is working.
I know from our perspective, I mean, I know that all apartment blocks are different, but the majority of those that we install now, there is no, they're looking for notifications back to central management systems or property managers, so that if the tenant or the property owner is away, they can access that through concierge services. I know they don't exist in all apartment blocks, but for the type of apartment blocks that we're seeing leak detection systems adopted in, there's always that sort of option for access if people are away from the property. So that's also what we've seen as well.
Thank you. Just looking to see if there's any other questions. We're okay. Can't see any other questions, I don't think.
Alex, there's a couple about sending the slides out. I think, like you said, this will be up on YouTube, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say all the slides are going to be sent out. They can be sent out if you request them, or you can watch it on online, where we'll send you the link for that as well. No, so if we don't have any other questions, I think we can end it there. So thank you, Andy, Paul, and Andrew. That was very insightful. And yeah, again, if you want, there'll be a copy sent around, and there'll also be a survey coming around, and it'll be really good to get everyone's feedback on how they found the business development webinar, and give us future recommendations for where we should go with these. Many thanks to everyone who's came, and have a great weekend.